Hello dear students, I am Dr. Prinpreet again. Today we shall talk about the concept of externalities and public goods. The concept of externalities I'll discuss first. Welfare economics talks about the need to achieve economic efficiency, especially from the point of view of the distribution of resources in the economy. This concept is based on Pareto optimality, which is also synchronous with the idea of maximum social welfare. It is assumed that Pareto optimality is achieved only when perfect competition prevails in the market. However, externalities are one such factor that prevent the attainment of Pareto optimality even under perfect competition. Externalities are the positive or negative effects of an economic activity on other economic agents in the economy. An externality can also be defined as a cost or even a benefit generated by a producer during the process of production, and the expenditure of the externality is neither incurred nor received by that producer. Such externalities can occur from consumption as well as the production of goods or services. To define it more explicitly, an externality means a cost or a benefit that results from a transaction, that is, the production or even consumption of a good or service, and whose impact has to be borne by a third party not even associated with the transaction. Externalities can be categorized as positive or negative. The beneficial effects created by a consumer or a firm for others in the economy are called positive externalities, and the detrimental effects created by a manufacturing firm or a consumer on others are called negative externalities. To explain it in simple terms, when an economic unit creates benefits for others for which he does not receive any payment in return, there exist positive externalities. On the other hand, when an economic unit creates costs or inflicts harmful effects on others without having to pay for his action, it is called a negative externality. In technical terminology, for a firm that creates positive externalities, that is, beneficial external effects, the private marginal cost of the firm is higher than the social marginal cost. This is so because the firm indulges in an activity that creates positive external effects on others by incurring a cost that is much higher than the cost that the society faces for reaping that benefit. In this case, the market price of the product or service is based on the marginal cost, which is higher than the social cost. Similarly, when a firm creates negative externalities, the private marginal cost is lower than the social cost because the firm does not have to take into account the disadvantages or the negative effects of its activity on the other members of the society. Therefore, in case of negative externalities, the price of the product, which is based on the private marginal cost, is lower than the value of the social cost because the society has to incur a greater cost in terms of undergoing the disadvantages created by a firm during the process of production. The analysis here indicates that in case where there are no externalities, all the costs and benefits incurred or received by either the producers or the consumers will be reflected in terms of the market price, and in that case the private cost and the social cost or the private benefit and the social benefit will tend to be equal. It is only when the externalities appear that market prices, which are determined on the basis of private cost or private benefits, are not a true indicator of social cost. This causes the private and social cost or the private and social benefits to be different from the market price. Now, let us first discuss the externalities in production. Production activity can lead to the generation of positive as well as negative externalities. The beneficial effects created by a firm during its process of production are explained as positive externalities, whereas the negative effects that a firm creates for the society while producing the goods are called negative externalities. Market failure would occur in case of both positive as well as negative externalities. That is why it is important to understand how positive and negative externalities in production occur and impact the society. Now, the production externalities can be discussed as positive. When a firm produces the goods on a large scale, it is possible to produce the goods at a lower cost per unit because of the firm's expansion, or what is also called internal economies of scale. On the other hand, when a firm expands its scale of output, there may be some benefits called external economies, a part of which is used by the other producers. Thus, a firm is able to create a positive impact from its production on other firms as well. One way of creating positive externalities for the firm that produces on a large scale is by training its labor, by providing some training programs and hence making skilled labor available for other firms as well, while they have to either pay no cost or a very nominal cost for the same. The producer firms can even create positive externalities by making the supply of inputs available at a very low price for all the firms in the industry. An example of a positive externality would be the construction of a bridge or a highway, which on one side facilitates easy transport and reduces the transportation costs, and on the other side it increases the commercial value of the land in the neighboring area. Then we come to the negative production externalities. Production can also generate certain negative externalities that can cause harmful effects either on the people living in the neighborhood where the production activity is being carried out, or on the members of the society at large. For example, air pollution created by the factory which emits smoke during production, or the waste material generated in the production process which may be dumped into the streams or water bodies, can create potential health hazards, especially for the people living in the surrounding areas. For such externalities, the firms might not be required to pay any price because the producers in these firms do not give any compensation to the residents of the neighboring areas who might otherwise be the direct victims of the pollution created by the production unit. Similarly, another example of negative externalities can be the case where the firms or the producers keep transporting their goods or raw materials to and fro, and hence keep the roads busy by sending their goods through these trucks. Now, this will not only keep the roads overcrowded, but will also increase the transportation cost of other firms that will need the same trucks for transporting their goods or raw materials. The firm that indulges in overcrowding the roads with its activity does not pay any price for the additional transportation cost that the other firms will be forced to pay in light of the busy roads and the trucks. Now, having discussed the externalities in production, we move on to discuss externalities in consumption. When consumption by one person creates either a beneficial or a harmful effect on the other people in the society, we call it as externality in consumption. In case of externalities in consumption, the private benefits occurred by a consumer are compared with the social benefits received by the society. When the private benefits are greater than the social marginal benefits, it creates a negative externality of consumption. On the other hand, if the social marginal benefit is more than the private benefit that accrues from consumption, it is called a positive externality of consumption. Now, similar to production, externalities in consumption are also divided into positive and negative. Let's discuss the positive side. A positive externality is said to have occurred when a person in the society is able to derive benefits from the goods or services that are being primarily consumed by someone else. If the government of a country wishes to promote positive consumption externalities, then it has to produce or supply goods that can be provided either free of cost or maybe at a reduced price. A major benefit of positive consumption externality is that it strongly promotes the consumption of all such goods which have greater social marginal benefit than the private benefit. For example, if a person is educated, the benefit of his education will not only be confined to himself, but will also spill over to the other members of the society. Similarly, the benefits accrued from the expenditure on research and development (R&D) by an industry are not confined to the producer alone or the company that funds the research. Rather, this R&D contributes to the existing body of knowledge pertaining to that field of research and further promotes growth and development of other industries as well. Now we discuss the negative externality in consumption. Negative externality in consumption is an outcome of the consumption of a good or a service where the society has to bear a negative impact of the consumption made by a particular individual or a community. To describe it better, it can be said that a negative externality is the negative outcome or effect borne by the members of a society because of the consumption of a good or service by one individual, even though the society was not involved in the consumption activity. Let's say, for example, a person who drives to work in his own vehicle creates smoke and pollutes the environment in which others breathe. This will cause a negative externality of consumption. Similarly, a family who is playing loud music because of some personal celebration will automatically disturb the peace of mind and comfort of the people living in the neighborhood. And this is also going to generate negative externality of consumption. That means in case of negative externalities, the private marginal benefit outweighs the social marginal benefit. Having discussed the externalities, now let's move on to the concept of public goods. Another important factor responsible for market failure is the existence of public goods in the market. This we mentioned in the previous module as well. Public goods are defined as those goods or services that are made available for consumption by all the people in the society without everyone having to pay for such goods. These goods are usually provided and administered by the government and are funded from tax revenue. For example, public parks, free education, national defense services, free healthcare facilities, etc. However, it is important to point out here that public goods are called public goods because they are available for consumption by almost all the people in the society, even though the people who consume them may not be paying for their consumption. Public goods are not called public goods because they are necessarily produced in the public sector. Rather, they can be produced even in the private sector. It is primarily the nature of these goods that leads to market failure and prevents the attainment of Pareto optimality or economic efficiency. Now, two special characteristics of public goods are that they are non-rival and non-exclusive from the point of view of consumption. These two characteristics of public goods are explained in detail further ahead. Let's first discuss the non-rivalry in consumption. So, to understand the concept of non-rivalry, it is important to develop knowledge about the concept of rival goods. A rival good is what? It is defined as a good which, when consumed by one person, cannot be consumed by another. For example, if person A eats an apple, person B cannot eat the same apple. Rather, B will have to buy a new apple from the market and pay a price for it before consuming it. This means that the consumption of one good by one person excludes other people from consuming it, because consumption by one person reduces the availability of such goods for other people in the society. Now, such goods are called rival goods because they are private goods and cannot be used as public goods. In contrast to this, public goods are those that possess non-rivalry in consumption. For example, public parks, national defense, knowledge about weather forecasts, etc. In case of such goods, consumption can be made by all people in the country at the same time. These goods are called non-rival goods because their consumption by one person does not restrict their consumption by other people in the society, nor does their consumption by one individual reduce their availability for other people to consume. Now, we move on to the second feature of public goods, which is non-excludability. Another important feature of public goods is their non-exclusive nature in terms of the distribution of the benefits of their consumption. When a public good is said to be non-exclusive in nature, it means that even if not impossible, it is at least difficult to exclude those people from consuming these goods who might not pay for their consumption. In case of private goods like apples, shirts, mobile phones, etc., the sellers can refuse to provide these goods to the people who do not pay the price for such goods. But in case of public goods, it is usually not possible to prevent people from consuming them, even if they do not pay for the consumption of these goods. For example, the security provided by way of national defense for the people of a country is provided to all people of that country, regardless of whether each one of them pays taxes to the government or not. This means that it is not possible for the government to exclude some people from receiving the benefits of public goods like security from the national defense system, etc., simply on the ground that not all of them have paid for the service. Now, there comes a problem which is attached to the public goods, which is called the free riders problem. The non-rivalry and non-exclusive nature of public goods is also what causes market failure or prevents the achievement of Pareto optimality or economic efficiency. Since public goods are non-exclusive in nature and the producers cannot even prevent those people from consuming these goods who do not pay a price for their consumption, it leads to a problem called the free riders problem. Free riders problem means that people who do not pay for the consumption of public goods cannot be excluded from enjoying their benefits. So people tend to take a free ride and take maximum benefits from the availability of such goods without even paying for them. Such people usually depend on the expenditure incurred by other people on these goods so that they can enjoy their benefits without making any payment. Such a situation and the inability of the producers to prevent the free riders from consuming these goods either leads the producer of such goods to not produce at all or at best produce a very small quantity of such goods. And this is what creates economic inefficiency or Pareto non-optimality in the economy and hence becomes responsible for causing the market failure. Now here let's try to find out how can market failure be eliminated. It is clear from the entire discussion so far that although externalities involve unregulated costs or benefits to the people in the neighborhood who are not even associated with the transaction, they lead to market failure and breed economic inefficiency in the system. Similarly, because of their significance from the point of view of their utility, public goods ought to be produced or made available in the economy even if not all people pay a price for their consumption. But since non-payment for such goods induces a state where the economy operates in a non-Pareto optimal or an inefficient state, such a situation might create a disincentive for the production or availability. That is why it becomes imperative for the government to find a solution to this problem and ensure that the transactions should be encouraged without the economy having to suffer because of non-existence of such transactions. Now, how can this be done? One way is internalization of the externalities. Research findings have suggested an effective way of solving the problem of market failure by internalizing the externalities, which means that the costs or benefits must be reflected in the price of the goods or services. This is what lies at the basis of concepts like polluters pay principle or the imposition of taxes. Now, one more measure of correcting market failure can be offering these public goods free of charge. Public goods like parks, roads, etc. are usually produced by the government at a particular cost, and once these goods are produced, even if an additional person is allowed to consume them, the marginal cost of these goods does not increase. As a result, a greater number of people can be made better off without making anyone worse off, even if those who do not pay for the goods are allowed to use them. This serves as a basis for allowing a zero price for the public goods. Then we can restrict the production of public goods to public sector also. Pareto optimality or economic efficiency in regards to the production of public goods can be achieved if their price is fixed at zero. But since the total cost of production of these goods is not zero, rather they have to be produced by incurring huge costs, a private producer will have to set their price above zero only so that he can recover the cost and make profits, which will of course be a divergence from Pareto optimality. And this is primarily why public goods should be left for production only by the public sector. Then we can also establish property rights on public goods as a measure to correct market failure. So if property rights can be defined and established on certain public goods like, let's say, lakes, etc., then it can solve problems attached to the use and maintenance of such public goods. For example, people can enjoy the benefits of a clean lake without having to pay for it. But if property rights are attached to that lake, the owner will ensure regular cleanliness of the lake and even charge some price from the fishermen or the boatsmen or the general public. This will ensure that the lake owner keeps the lake clean and maintains its environmental quality on a regular basis. So to conclude, I would like to say that economic analysis of the principle of maximum social welfare requires that the resources should be distributed in the economy in such a way that it is not possible to rearrange the distribution of the resources by increasing the welfare of one person without reducing the welfare of another person. And this is also called Pareto optimality or economic efficiency. However, externalities and public goods work as conditions that lead to market failure and reduce economic efficiency. There are various externalities in production as well as consumption where the costs and benefits incurred or received in the transaction are not reflected in the prices. Similarly, in case of public goods, the prices are not paid by all consumers, yet these goods and services are made available for consumption by all the members of the society. This also causes a state of market failure which can be corrected by remedial measures like either charging some price from all the consumers for the benefits availed from these goods or absolutely offering these goods free of cost, or maybe by assigning the responsibility of production of such goods and services to the state authority alone, taxing the consumption of such goods or services, or maybe even by establishing property rights and charging a market price that can facilitate regular use and maintenance of these goods so that the benefits can be availed equally by all. So with this, we come to the end of today's discussion. Thank you so much for the patient listening.